TV, the voice for humanity.
Hi, welcome to the New York Parrot Literary Corner. Today's guest is Michael Guinn. He is a national renowned spoken word artist performer, published author, an award-winning poet and actor, high impact community events organizer, and mental health advocate and activist with a global audience. He has more than 20 years on stage, film, radio, and public speaking experience. Michael is proud to be on the show today and would love to contribute to this series as a featured speaker. This past February in 2020, he used the Irma P. Hall Black Theater Award for featured actor in the stage play and is currently appearing in 2 Amazon Prime series, Peter the series, and he's just wrapping up filming for season 2 of Washed. He is currently cast as lead in a regional film called God's Tired, directed by Michael Green. He has been a featured actor in several short films and documentaries and is no stranger to the stage. He has a huge following and brings everything he has to the table as a featured guest or artist. Besides being an actor and activist, Michael Guinn is a former 2-time National Poetry Slam finalist, Toronto International Slam champion, and 4-time Austin International Poetry Fest Slam champion, Great Plains Pile Up Slam champion. Michael also has more than 25 years of coordinating and hosting upscale open mics and national spoken word showcases. He is the director of Mike Guinn Entertainment and founder of Uplift Your Life, a 501c3 which addresses mental health and wellness globally. Michael's also been a featured storyteller with East Texas's leading contributor to culture awareness via news and stories, the Tyler Loop, and is currently working with the world-renowned TAASA's Men's Story Project, that's Texas Association Against Sexual Assault. So thank you, Michael, for joining us on the program today. I hope you're doing good.
I am, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Wonderful to have you. My first question is, in your bio, you mentioned mental health advocacy. I'm curious what sort of work you do there.
Well, I am, I work for City Square, which is one of the largest organizations in Texas that addresses homelessness with youth and adults. And I work as a youth permanent supportive housing coach, which provides case management for youth who have aged out of foster care, but who also suffer from a mental illness. So my job is to provide housing options, job options, college options, and just resources, and just to be, very, very intensive in providing case management. So I do that.
And does that ever factor into your poetry? Do you write about people you meet or the events that you face in that work?
When I first started out as a CPS investigator for the state of Texas, that's how it started. I started by venting through writing. Didn't know anything about poetry, didn't know anything about the spoken word, definitely didn't know anything about slam. It was just a way to rewrite myself back to, sanity from all the things I've seen as a CPS investigator. So, and then of course, through the years, it's morphed into, this kind of mental health advocacy by providing storytelling with messages and providing a little insight for the world to see what we go through,
Right, and I think poetry as a form of sharing experience is very powerful. It's very mental and it's very human, and I think that's definitely a good way of expressing yourself as any kind of struggle you're going through as a person. It doesn't have to be academic. You could be facing a problem in your life and you just don't know what to do. And if you start writing it down, it starts to make sense to you a little better. Has that been your experience as well?
That has been my experience, and to be honest, I've been asked to come speak and do a lot of conferences to speak about it in that regard. So yeah, that's definitely my experience and the experience of a lot of other poets as well.
And my own experience too is you make sense of the world more when you're writing about it than trying to just do it free flow, loose, without any kind of, anchor. So what is God's Tired? I was really curious about that. And what is the film about, and how did you get involved in that?
Well, I'm sorry. I just drink a smoothie, so I'm, I got that little itis. You talk about CP. But God's Tired, first of all, is directed by Michael Guinn. Michael Guinn is a poet turned actor turned producer turned filmmaker, and being on stages all around, someone saw me, thought I might do good at acting, and here I am. But God's Tired is a story about a pastor. It's the story of a day in the life of a pastor on a Tuesday afternoon when, he goes to the church and he's got all these people, got all these problems. And so what it is, it shows the pastor putting out fires over here, handling church issues here. There's a choir issue here. There's a gang issue here. There's some, marital issues here. There's some, just so much stuff. And that he's like, oh, God's tired, So that's it. It's about a pastor that really, really works hard to be there for his flock. And of course, it's a lot. So
I think that would embrace empathy for someone in that work. And, you would, watching it, viewing it, you could, there's some one of those kind of maligned lines of, work that some people don't really understand. And maybe they'll get a better understanding of that from that film. That's right. Very interesting. So you also, you've been at AIPF. How was your experience there?
You know what? The first time I tried to go to AIPF, at the time, it was way back in the early 2000s, they didn't allow anyone from the state because it's an international poetry festival. So me being, only 3 hours from Austin, I was never allowed to participate, and so I moved to Sacramento the year after I applied to go, and then voila, I was able to get into that, because they would, they allow people from outside the state to come in. And then since then, I've been involved on a regular basis as a part of either hosting, coordinating workshops, and then of course hosting the poetry slams after competing in the poetry slam and getting my name in there that way. So, there's a lot of different ways to get in. If you just stay, vigilant about it, stay diligent, stay consistent, and persevere, so to speak. So that's what I did. I found a way to get in, and they saw who I was and my energy, and I've been involved all these years. So whenever it pops up, yeah.
And that's a long time, since the early 2000s. I've been to it a few times, and I think they allowed me, as I guess they may kind of altered the rules a little bit since then. I did participate a few times in the last few years. I haven't been in a while, but it's an excellent forum. I enjoyed the people there, and I know quite a few of them, and they're really good people. So you had a positive experience there, and enjoyed the readings. So you do workshops, you do slams, and so you're pretty familiar with the slam style. And I'm just curious, like, for those out there that are listening in, what would your advice be is the best way to present yourself as a slam poet in a slam?
Well, you know what? I truly, first of all, I'm not involved in slams anymore, but I still host. I still host slams, and I still, provide information about them and support them. But first of all, I don't believe in the term slam poet. I believe in the term poet or spoken word artist who participate in a poetry slam competition. I'd hate to devalue the person and their skill by just saying that they're a slam poet, but I understand what you mean by that.
Right.
A poet who brings a lot of energy, a lot of different skill sets to the art of presenting poetry with a little bit of spoken word storytelling attached to it. So that's but those types of presentations tend to work better because poetry slams are mainly about the performance of the art of telling a story by adding in different spices. I see it as a meal, and you can get a buffet, which is poetry slam, or you can just order fish. What I'm saying? That's the way I see it. So, but my advice would be, my advice would be, Dustin, and that's just my personal opinion. My
Mhm.
advice would be to anybody who's going to participate in a poetry slam competition is just to be yourself and to learn, to grow. Don't take it personally. There are different people at different levels of presentation. Some of them are naturals. Some of us, like me, have to work very hard. It was 5 years before I made my own poetry slam team. That's how bad I sucked. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah. So it took a lot of practice, but what I learned from all that is how to read an audience, and that to me is the biggest part of a poetry slam, is reading your audience, knowing what's going on, feel it, kind of instinctively knowing, okay, there's a couple there. That's about maybe that's 25, 30 Black people. Maybe I shouldn't do this poem. So you got, I'm just saying, and then that's part of it. And the rest of it is your performance,
right?
And
so you would come up with sort of a set list, and you would have a criteria for yourself, and then when you go in and you look at the audience, you decide from what your toolkit. You're like, okay,
right.
So this poem would be more appropriate for these guys,
right? And I listen to what goes on before me or what goes on after me, and then that lessens even more the set list. If I go in with 12 poems in my Rolodex, like, okay, I've got 12 poems memorized. I've got poems about love. I got poems about, culture. I got personal tragedy. I've got, social work poems. And then I get in there and the first 4 poets got high scores for being funny. Then that throws all the social work stuff out right there until I get up until maybe the later rounds, So I've got something that's going to resonate with what's working well in the room, so I can make it to the next round. And after that, I can set the bar high. That's always been my strategy. But other than that, I just pretty much just go in, just do what I feel, and that has worked for me.
Right. So you also have several books. Maybe you could tell us about the evolution of your writing as well, and about your specific books that you've released.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dustin, I have 2 books. I've been a part of a lot of different anthologies, but my first book was very. It was during the early 2000s, and it was me at the beginning stages. I started out as more of an academic poet. I was involved in the poetry societies, National Federation of State Poetry Societies, Mockingbird chapter, writing groups. I did all the little academia stuff. And then I got introduced to poetry slam and spoken word. And so now I kind of mixed them both together. So the evolution of my writing from poet, to performance poet, to poet who now writes and participates in poetry slam. And my books kind of cover, first, my first book, Crying in Colors, covers that evolution. And my next book, Moist, is nothing but erotic and sensual poetry. So I don't even bring that out, in most events, because I want to make sure that I, keep those separate, But yeah, started out as a poet, academia, all the tenets of poetry, villanelles, sestinas, tanka, senru, haiku, all that stuff. Then I kind of mixed it all together in my spoken word storytelling as it pertained to my own personal life.
Well, interesting. Would you like to read a poem or two for us?
Sure. I can share a poem or two. The first poem I'm going to share is a poem called Wings. It's something I wrote for my grandmother who raised me. And high up in a clear blue sky, I rise, soaring in symphonies, gliding upon an orchestra of freedom. Now, as I fly, I take a deep breath and taste the sun laughing in lemon drops, while clouds smile soft candy cotton upon my face. And this moment becomes the sweetest memory I've ever known. Wings don't fail me now. Heaven howls a rhapsody that beckons the air beneath these wings to be at my command forever. Strong, bold breezes cool the aches of my feathers, ruffling them with melodies, killing them softly with wind songs, guiding me back home where I belong. Somehow, I have to find my way to tomorrow. You see, my destiny is waiting for me there, hiding in between drum beats, waiting in between whispers, caressing my soul with the sound of silence. And as I spread these wings, I'll cut like black thunder, slicing the sky, creating soliloquies against the wind and set the night on fire. You see, nothing will stop my flight because I plan on flying forever. So wings, don't fail me now. I'm almost home. There you go.
Excellent. I love it. It's and I was also raised by my grandmother, so I relate to that. And it's a very, you know, rare experience, I think, and it's a beautiful experience to be raised by your grandmother because they really love you. I mean, they really put their heart into you.
Right.
So that was a beautiful poem. One thing I noticed, I'm sure you probably do this intentionally as you're writing. You use a lot of internal rhyme, and there's a lot of flavor in that. In that particular poem, there's a lot of food imagery, candy imagery, sensual kind of
Right.
experience. So is that something you focus on and try to deliberately do, or is that just what evolves into the poem?
That has been how the poems have evolved. I haven't intentionally done that. And again, that was for me more of a poetic performance, because of the end rhymes and the stuff. But I don't know where it comes from. And to be honest, Dustin, I didn't even take poetry classes and workshops until after I started writing. And then I went back to find out, okay, this natural ability, as you know, you probably have it too, this natural inclination to have end rhymes, slant rhymes is always been there, but you want to be more disciplined as a writer. So that poem is the result of the more disciplined writing. So.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think it's true that you have certain style inborn in you as a writer, it comes from your personality as a person.
Right.
And you, as you're writing, you develop, and you go through these trying to give titles to your different stylistics, that's been my experience. You try to understand exactly where you're coming from as a writer. Yeah, I think that's very true. So, I've read your sample work, that you sent. One of the things I noticed in one of the poems, there's a line, and it's from the poem "Faith, Luck, and Willpower." And this is interesting to me. Is you say, "I write to hold on to the bits and pieces of Africa in this American body." So, is there sort of an identity, a form of relating to your more ancestral feelings in your poetry?
You know what? Some of my it is exactly that. I was in a writing prompt room on Clubhouse when I wrote that last weekend, and again, as you know, whenever you get these writing prompts, you kind of just go with the momentum of whatever that prompt evokes. And I think the fact that I focused on that kind of leads me to believe that at the surface of me is always a question about identity, about ancestry, about skin. And then you have all the stuff going on around you with the news and nooses and all the other things. So it kind of creates a mental Molotov cocktail of ideals, and they just kind of come out whenever you're challenged with the prompt. They're always right there simmering above the surface. And then all it takes is one thing. You know what? I was just thinking about, and then it comes out,
Right. Interesting. And then there's another one, another line that came out at me as from a letter to a daughter. You already have all you need to be free. And to me, that's another, we go back to looking into oneself. The poem some sort of indicates that not what the externals sort of influence your own self and your personality, and try to be authentic in the world. And I really liked that poem for that reason. And what was the story behind that?
Well, the story is simply my teenage daughter who lives with me and now is living with her mom. When COVID hit here last year, I sent her back to Reno because it got rough here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for a while. So, but before she left, she was here for 3 or 4 years, and she was boot camp. She anything that a teenager who is trying to be on the wrong path would try, she tried it. And me being an ex-CPS investigator and being someone who's on his ex-military, on his toes, I would always she just wasn't a very good criminal. You know what I'm saying? So I would always catch things. So that was me explaining to her that you already have all you need.
Right.
You got loving parents, And to me, Dustin, why don't these kids see us as a resource for their success? And they don't. They'd rather go out there and do trial and error, or as the old folks say, bump your head, instead of just, smooth. You got dad, you got TV, you got college, you got a life, you got, kids, you got it smooth. Why do you have to go and get into trouble and have a record and be on probation and smoke weed and you almost get pregnant? So that's where that came from.
Right. So do you think that I'm looking at the poem, as it's a very, it's not an elaborate, poem in the sense of like using a lot of imagery and stylistics. It's a very direct communication. And so do you feel like, that's sometimes the proper way to address a poem is just straightforward, direct?
Of course. We encounter, as a featured poet, is my job, or as a featured poet, it would behoove us, or it would be to our advantage to have stuff that's not way over here all the time. You don't have to be metaphors and similes and alliteration people to death. Just have a simple message for those who came from that. Have the crazy stuff for those who appreciate wordplay. Have this right here for those who appreciate the poetry in it. Have a little bit, and if you can create a poem that has a little bit of all that, that's great. But you definitely should have in your repertoire a little bit of everything. So that's what I've always tried to, first thing I do, Dustin, is I consider myself the audience. What would I want to hear from me? What would I want to hear from Dustin? I want to hear Dustin's poem by his grandma. I want to hear Dustin's poem where he, was performed one time at a slam. I want to hear Dustin's poem about water. I want all the poets. So you can't just give them, bam, bam, bam all the time. Slow down, bring them back home. And that's why I write, and I also speak like that as well. So that's something I actually said to my daughter.
Interesting. And would you like to do another poem for us?
Sure, I'll create. This is a spoken word piece. It has some poetic tenets. It's a poem I wrote for my mom, and it's called Back. You said I was born a bastard. That's what you told me, Mama. Dark moon of your nightmare, half and half, but not whole, of a sum from a story retold over and over again from the center of my soul. I was just 3 minutes removed from being torn from the uterus of then, back when the sun turned its back and shadows cried. And even though just a seed, I could still feel you bleed from daddy's dirty deed, but he was the bastard, Mama, not me. I remember swimming inside you as you lay near death. And when you were well enough to feel my movement, your anger and resentment rumbled like thunder. And I wondered how much longer I had to be before you got rid of me. And even though an unwanted fetus, I knew who I was, Mama, your son, the unchosen one. But in the ovum of that moment, I felt you concede my existence, no longer resisting the urge to murder the unborn metaphor and leave me lying in a pool of aborted promises. And that day, the day I learned to escape danger by dodging coat hangers, jabbing with the anger of the desperate stranger you'd become. That day I felt you scraping and screaming as you squatted to be free of me, and you almost did, Mama, but I hung on, clinging to your womb like a dangling participle, clutching a poem yet written. I survived, Mama. I survived to prove that statistics just don't fit, and I ain't nobody's misfit, and I can still hear you screaming, boy, you ain't gonna be spit, but I am. Now I will no longer be a pun for food stamps or income tax, because I am more than that. I am more. I am more than just sperm jettisoned from the tomb of my father's already limp affections. I am more than that. I am more. I wish you loved me like I loved you. I loved you, Mama. Still, you said I was born a bastard. So this poem, for all those times you beat me for looking like him. And this line is a tie that binds me to the umbilical of those moments where you made me feel like a weed without roots at the foot of an empty family tree, because there was no one there, just me. But I am not like my father, Mama. I am living proof that flowers can bloom from this seed. I am not like my father, Mama, because 1% of you inside me is the reason why I believe. And we've come a long way from belt buckles and criticism. And I just want you to know that all the love I ever knew grew to create me from you. And I'm going to take all this power and all this rage and leave my heart and soul on the Parrot literary corner stage for you, because I am not a bastard, Mama. I'm a poet. I'm a man. I made it. And one day, my metaphors will open up heaven's doors and leave tear prints across the sky. And that day, that glorious, wonderful day, you and I will soar. Happy Mother's Day, Mama.
Excellent. That was powerful. I'm speechless. And when you perform, I mean, are you conscious of the feelings that are being developed, or do they just sort of happen? I mean, do you just pull them out, or do they develop as you're moving along? Or
I intentionally chose that poem for this stage.
Mhm.
Feelings were already developing, but as you know, when you are an artist and you share a poem, you always go back to the place you were in your heart when you wrote it.
Mhm.
So it always happens. So, but if I'm in a room full of people, even now I can feel your energy, then I'm definitely gonna feel it more if I feel the energy of the people receiving it, and I'm aware of that. I can feel that. Yes.
Excellent. So back to the acting, how did you get involved in and your various performances you're doing, that was especially, I'm curious about the Amazon Prime series.
Well, you know what? Back in 2003, while living in Sacramento, I was looking in the Sacramento Bee, and I was looking for an open mic, and I found something that said open, and I didn't read the rest of it, and I went to the address at the Sac State and went to the room, and it wasn't no people there. It was just two people sitting at a table, and I was like, "Well, I'm here for the open mic." He said, "Well, let's hear what you got," and I did that poem right there. I did that poem,
Mhm.
and they cast me for the lead in the play 2 years
Oh,
in a row.
wow.
And that's how I got into acting. That's how it happened. And ever since then, I moved back to Texas. People, when you get into when your first acting audition, which I didn't know it was an audition, I just saw open. Again, Black people stuff. I didn't read the rest of the thing. It didn't say open audition. I just said open. Oh, there it is. So I just arrived, and I wondered why there was two people at the table. I was like, well, I'm just here waiting. So they called me in. I signed the list. Everything seemed like open mic. So, but then they cast me for the lead in this play, and
Mhm.
since then, there's been momentum. People found out about that. There's been some, videos out there. Hey, Mike, can you do this? I heard you do this, and I've accumulated a lot of acting roles. Been nominated for a few, and then had a chance to because of poetry again, be in front of some people who came to an open mic and saw me and thought I'd be good as a bad guy in a TV series called Peter, where I play a guy who owns a lot of properties and they're being robbed. And so, yeah, so there it is. So, and ever since then, it's been plays and film, and I've done a lot of stuff with documentaries, and I've just been blessed to be able to do that. But I never leave where I started, and that's what the poetry, the spoken word, is always open doors for me. And it proved that an old guy like me still got it. You know what I'm saying? We still got it.
Absolutely.
I'm on this show. There you go. So I really appreciate
There you go. And you're performing. I mean, you're full of energy. I mean, it's wonderful listening. So have you ever been a judge of a slam as well as performance?
I have been an MC right now. Currently, I coordinate a lot of poetry slams, but I've judged UIL, poetry contest. So people and to be honest, I actually am judged. This is my 5th year being a judge for the NAACP Image Awards. I judged the poetry category, and if you can see behind me, they send me all these books, and then I read them, and they ask me to make an opinion about which poet deserves the NAACP Image Award for poetry. I'm on the committee for that. So people do, trust me. And when they approach me, we watched you for 3 years before we approached you, and you are consistent. You're high energy. We believe you're an expert at this. We want you on this committee, and I've been doing it ever since. So I have been a judge for a few things.
Excellent. Do you have any interesting stories about people you've met along that path, or?
Yeah, I've met, obviously the most notable is, spoken word poet and actor, Michael Jamal Warner. I've met him. Tim Brown, used to play for the Raiders. Don Lewis used to play for Different World. Let's see, The Rock. I met The Rock, from the old series. I've met Forrest Whitaker because I used to. Hollywood asked me to do a poetry slams for movies that came out. So every year I would do a poetry slam. So I've got posters and memorabilia that's been signed by Forrest and Denzel. So I've had a lot of action with a lot of different people. Howard Hewitt with Shalimar. It's just a lot of people, a lot of singers mainly. Angie Stone. What's his name? You Got What I Need. What's his name? That guy. I
have no idea, honestly.
Anyway, he's a big rap guy from the 80s. So I've done a lot of things with that as well. But yeah, I've done a lot of things and met a lot of people and a lot of poets who are now actors, Saul Williams, and so,
yes.
I met Amiri Baraka. I opened for Nikki Giovanni, sung as Marvin X, The Last Poets, so I've done a lot of things. Slam has opened up some doors, but not as much as away from Slam, where there's no competition. It's just us, just like right now, and people actually can hear you and don't have to listen to 20 other people for 2 hours, So.
Right. And I guess, it gets tiring after a while to listen to like 20 different people after 2 hours, as you say.
Right.
It's kind of like, okay, well, I've been here for a while. I'm, kind of just zoning out a little bit at this point.
Yeah.
That's how I feel sometimes at longer readings. It's,
right.
You're just there. You're just present. You're not really participating as an active audience member. Right. So we have about 6 minutes or so left in the program. So if you want to try reading another poem real quick, and then maybe leave us with some final words of
Sure.
your thoughts on poetry and what you want to say to the world at large.
Okay. Well, first of all, man, thank you so much for this platform. You and your partner there, I really appreciate it. And definitely send me the links, whatever it is. I'm going to send them, spread them everywhere. You know how I am. I'm on that. All right. I haven't done a love poem yet, so I'll do a love poem. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do that. All right. Here it is. It's called Every Day. If I could capture a rainbow, I'd wrap you in my favorite colors and paint you perfect. And if you truly knew you the way I do, you'd know why I'd get down on my hands and knees, reach inside my soul, gather moonbeams and starlight, arrange them in a beautiful bouquet, place them at your feet and say, I grew those for you. And every day, all I do is think of ways to do and say more than I did the day before, to tell you how much I miss you. And right now, all I ever want to do is to take you Tuesday, wake you Wednesday, quench your Thursdays till Friday, then sit Saturday, sipping your Sundays till Monday. You see, I just want to love you daily. I want you to get sprung in the spring, sizzle in the summer, feast on me falling, calling as you and I anticipate the autumn and get wild with the waste in winter, because my love is all the seasons you need. I want you to go crazy as I slide off your January, pull down your February, March, right up in between your Aprils as May becomes June, and your July lays naked in the August of my September till you remember that October was when my naughty November eased inside your delicious December. Listen, woman, all I'm trying to say is I want to love you every day. There you go.
Excellent. Beautiful. And I especially love the opening lines, the rainbow. I don't even know how a poem like that could be born. Just like this first initial hit is impactful automatically and captivating. So, what would you like to say to our viewers who are, we have viewers all across the world. So if you want to impart some thoughts to them and let us know what you think of the, poetry world at large and so forth.
You know what? The poetry world, the poetry slam world, and the spoken word world are all different worlds, but it's platforms like this that provide a place for people like me to kind of be a bridge to all those worlds. And I would anybody listening that try your hand without judgment, just be open-minded. Try your hand at going or attending or either via Zoom, an open mic or a poetry slam. Volunteer to be a judge. Get a little taste of all that. And if you do that, one day you'll be on the Parrot Literary Corner.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your praise. So we still have about 3 minutes. Maybe you want to do another short like a really short poem
Right.
at the end here, so we can cap off at the end.
Okay, well, I got one for you. This is a little limerick I wrote for my son. It's called Little Winky. My little Winky. I fell down and hurt my pinky, but I got right up, no tears, no fuss, but I think I made a stinky. Bam, there it is right there. Genius. It is a Pulitzer Prize happening. I see a National Book Award happening right now.
Right, I see it too. It's coming your way.
Yeah. It saves lives.
So if you want to give it, final shout out to friends, family, anybody that you're associated with, that you want to say, hey, thanks for all you do for me. Feel free to do that as well. We still have a couple of minutes.
Shout out to my mom, who I love. Shout out to my brothers. Shout out to the entire Texas spoken word and poetry community. Shout out to all the youth out there and anybody else who ever thought they couldn't write. Here I am, just write. Shout out to y'all, because you can do it. Shout out to Parrot Literary Corner. There it is. That'll be $5.
Thank you. That's the $1 billion book award there. You've been watching the New York Parrot Literary Corner. Thanks to all our viewers, and thank you, Michael Guinn, for joining us today. We've really appreciated our talk, and if you're out there, anybody listening in, viewing, we can donate, subscribe to the channel. We're doing the 1 million subscriber challenge, where we're trying to gather 1 million subscribers to this channel, and we appreciate our viewers as much as anybody else out there. We appreciate you more than anybody else out there. I promise you that. And we give this platform to anyone who is interested in being a part of the New York Parrot Literary Corner, whose mind is, you have a creative mind and you want to share your words, share your thoughts and your experiences. So please keep watching, keep us all in mind here, and put your, like I said, hit that subscribe button. And thank you all for viewing our station. And thank you again, Michael, for joining us today. I enjoyed your poems and I enjoyed talking to you. So God bless you, and have a nice evening to yourself there. And we'll talk soon.
All right.